Hi, girls. This is our second week of studying Esther. Today we're going to talk about Esther 3 and 4. It is Sunday, April the 5th, and also known as Palm Sunday. So I know our Bible lesson with Miss Lauren's going to be about that. But today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about Esther. I've got on my shirt again. Today, this scripture is from Esther 4:14, which is what we're going to read about and talk about today, just to bring you up to date. Remember last week we ended it with Esther has become queen, and Mordecai is kind of outside the king's gates or the city gates, watching for her, making sure she's being okay and well taken care of, and he overhears a plot by two of his guards that they're going to kill him. Mordecai lets Esther know this. She reports it. It's investigated and found out that those two men were trying to kill the king. So he has them killed and writes it down in the book of Annals for a later date. Didn't really do anything for Mordecai, but maybe, just for future reference, he's written that down. So after all this has happened, King Xerxes is going to promote Haman. And Haman is a man who has been evil and mean all of his life. He is a descendant from the Amalekites. He is called Haman the Agagite. And if you'll remember way back, we're going to talk about this in just a second, but meanness always has a history, Beth Moore says. And so Haman descended from the tribe of people. Remember way back when we were studying the kings, and in 1 Samuel, God told Saul to kill all of the Amalekites, the men, women, children, and animals. And this was a really harsh command, but these people were the bitter enemies of the Jewish people, and they were thwarting them at every turn and doing horrible things against God's will. So he told Saul to go kill them. If you remember, Saul did not. He and his men kept some of the best, and they had King Agag. They didn't kill him, but later on, Samuel had to come and kill him. So it was a long history, and throughout history, the Amalekite people were not the friends of the Jewish people. So here, going back, King Xerxes is going to promote him, and he promotes him to kind of second in command. He's higher than all the other officials, and the royal staff at the gate, every time he walks by or walks through town, people have to bow to him. Well, this is what the king has commanded for a man such as this. But Mordecai would not bow down. Mordecai would not pay homage to him. The other officials warned him and said, "Oh, you're going to get in so much trouble because that's the king's command." And he still wouldn't listen to them. And as a Jew, Mordecai knew the only person he would bow to would be the Lord. So he does reveal to them that he is Jewish. And so they, of course, run and tattle on him. And they go to Haman, and when he finds out that Mordecai's not bowing, he gets very angry. And even more so once he figures out that he's Jewish, and he thinks, I have to destroy him. But wait, it's not good enough just to destroy him. I've got to destroy all the remnants of the Jewish people in all these provinces that are left from when they were all exiled and then they've been allowed to go home. Well, a lot of them are still here. So he is just on a tear, and an angry tear. And he's got to figure out a way to get the king on his side so that it can become an order, it can become a decree, and it'll get carried out. So he starts casting lots, and they call it the pur, P-U-R. And if you remember when Jesus was on the cross, the guards below the soldiers were casting lots for his clothing. And I've seen pictures or drawings, and it kind of looks like little stones, and I don't know if they had numbers on them, but it's kind of like gambling and throwing dice. and it tells them. So this was the first month of the year, and they say it was Nisan, and it landed on the 12th month, the month of Adar. So that's the day that they had picked for that. So Haman goes to inform King Xerxes, and he says it very cunningly, very sneakily. He says, there is one ethnic group scattered throughout the people in every province of your kingdom, and they're keeping themselves separate. Their laws are different from everyone else's, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. And then he says, if the king approves, let an order be drawn up authorizing their destruction, and I will pay 375 tons of silver. That's a lot of silver. A ton is 2,000 pounds, so 750,000 pounds of silver for the officials to deposit in the royal treasury. So the king removes his signet ring. The king wore special rings, and he had a ring that had his seal in it, and it was called a signet ring. And he gave it to Haman, and the king told him, okay, the money and the people are given to you. Do with what you see fit. Doesn't that seem like a cowardly way to handle it? Yes, something bad's going to happen, but I don't really want. So here, let me give you my ring with my name or stamp or seal, whatever that says the king, and you can put that on the wax as they send all this out. So the royal scribes were all summoned, and they wrote up the order exactly as Haman told them to, and it was sent for all the governors of all the provinces and all the officials of each ethnic group throughout all those, and it was written in their own language and their own script. And letters were sent by couriers to each of the different provinces, telling the officials to destroy, kill, and annihilate all of the Jewish people, young and old, men and women, children, and then plunder their possessions on a single day, the 13th day of Adar, A-D-A-R, the 12th month. So a copy of the text was issued throughout every province. I imagine this took a little bit of time, and so all the people could get ready for that day. The couriers left, spurred on by royal command, and the law was issued in the fortress of Susa and then out to all the provinces all over Persia. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, sort of oblivious, while the city was in turmoil and confusion. So that's how chapter 3 ends. Chapter 4 starts out, it says, Mordecai appeals to Esther. So when Mordecai learned about the plot, now at this point, Esther doesn't know yet. So Mordecai learned about it, and he tears his clothes. And remember, that is a Jewish tradition that when people are in mourning, they tear their clothes, they put on sackcloth and ashes, rub ashes on their body and their clothes. And he went into the middle of the city, and he's crying loudly and bitterly. He's causing quite a scene. He went only as far as the king's gate because you weren't allowed to go inside wearing sackcloth. So he's out there, and there was great mourning amongst all the other Jewish people because they saw what he was doing. And Esther's servants came to her and said, oh, that man they don't know necessarily that he's her cousin, but that man is out there crying and wailing and causing a big scene. So she had clothes sent to him and wanted him to change clothes, but he refused to do it. So Esther sent one of her servants that she trusted, Hathach, Hathach, to go down to Mordecai and try to find out what was going on. So he goes down and talks to him, and Mordecai tells him everything that has happened, as well as the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to put in the royal treasury if this order is carried out to slaughter all the Jews. And Mordecai also gave him a written copy, or a copy of the written decree that was issued about their destruction, so that he could take it back to Esther and explain it to her and command her to approach the king, to implore his favor and plead with him personally for her people. And so he came back and he repeated all this to Esther, Hathach did. So Esther spoke to him again and commanded him to go back and tell Mordecai. All the royal officials and the people of the royal provinces know that one law applies to every man or woman who approaches the king in the inner courtyard and who has not been summoned: the death penalty. So if she were to just go and talk to the king without being summoned or called on, she could be killed, unless the king extends the golden scepter, allowing the person to enter. You know, it's like a golden wand. Here's my pretend one. But he's sitting on his throne, and he's got a big gold staff, and he would hold it out and say, okay, come forward, and you can talk to me then. And she told him, she said, he hasn't called on me in like the last 30 days. So go and tell him that. And she went back and told Mordecai. And Mordecai told the messenger to reply to Esther, "Don't think that you will escape the fate of all the Jews because you are in the king's palace. If you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will come to the Jewish people from another place, but you and your father's family will be destroyed." And then he asked her, "Who knows, perhaps you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." And so Esther is very moved by this, and she sends this reply back to Mordecai: "Go and assemble all the Jews that can be found in Susa and fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my female servants will also fast in the same way. After that, I will go to the king, even if it is against the law. If I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went and did everything that Esther had commanded him. So we're leaving her here at the end of this, where she is preparing a way of how can I draw closer to the king and ask him to spare my people. Remembering one thing, she can't just go in on her own. She's going to have to be summoned in. And two, now that it's been written down, it is law and it cannot be erased or undone. So she's going to have to come up with a plan of how can we override this or overrule this. Some of our discussion points, when I did the Esther Bible study, and it's 12 years old, but it's Esther. It's tough being a woman. And in it, Beth Moore says, it's tough being a woman in a mean world. And meanness always has a history. And that's where she talked about Haman being an Agagite, which means he was descended from the Amalekites. And then that's the story of King Agag, who was not killed by Saul, and Samuel had to end up killing him. And Haman had spent his entire career being mean and evil. And the only one that Mordecai would bow to was God. And Haman describes the Jews as a certain people. See, he's not even naming them. It's making them kind of invisible to the king. It's like, oh, here's some people, I don't even know who they are. And in his own cowardly way, he didn't ask. He didn't want to know. It was easier. He said, a certain people who are dispersed and scattered among all the people in your kingdom. This way, it was easier for the king to think about killing a group of people when they were unknown or not really identified to him in a personal way. Of course, he didn't know that Esther was Jewish. So King Xerxes allowed his royal signet ring to be used to sign the decree, and they would write it out, and then they would put wax on it and put the ring in there, and it would make an impression that probably said, the royal house of Xerxes or whatever it would say, so that people knew it was from him, and then that would be put all over the provinces and all over Persia. And not only did Haman want to kill every man, woman, and child, but who was Jewish, but he also wanted to steal their property and take anything they owned of value. And one of the things I like that Beth Moore says, anytime it says in the Bible, who knows, as in, who knows but that you may have come to royal position for such a time as this, the answer is always God knows, because this is all part of God's plan. Here we know that Esther is going to fast and pray to the Lord, and being Jewish, that of course is what we know. And back in those times especially, people didn't just fast to fast. They did it to forego everything else, every other comfort around them, so that they could fully focus their attention on God. So she and her servants are going to be fasting and praying for 3 days, and Mordecai is asking all the other Jewish people to do the same. She's trying to gather her courage. She's praying to the Lord for a plan and how she can make a decision to help solve this crisis. There's some study questions in this week, and if you still don't have this and want me to mail it or email it to you, I can certainly do that. I did that to a few more this week. There's 10 little questions in here just kind of reviewing the story. Haman had been promoted to a high position. What did people do when he walked by? Well, they bowed. We know that. How did Esther react to the news that Mordecai was wearing sackcloth? Well, she was very upset and concerned, and I think maybe afraid he might be revealing a little bit more of them. There's an anagram this week, which I like. There's scrambled words up in here, like I can see an easy one. That's crown. So if you want to try to solve those, here I see another one. Queen. You got it. And then here's a little easy crossword puzzle that's in here. Not too hard. And then Esther's prayer journal this week. I think at the end of this one, boy, she's probably praying, Lord, I'm not only on my knees, I've got my face to the floor. I'm praying so hard for answers and a way. Lord, help us to get through this. Help us to know how to handle this. Help us to stop Haman. And I will tell you a little thing. This story becomes a celebration for the Jewish people called Purim, Purim. And they traditionally read the whole book of Esther before they eat their meal that night. And every time they say Haman's name, they hiss because he's evil. They boo. And when they say Esther's name, they cheer because she is the heroine of all this. So this week's This I Know is God is always in control. When circumstances in my life seem crazy and out of control, I can rest assured that God is working things out exactly according to His plan for my life. God is always aware of the tiniest details that are going on in my life, and He has a perfect plan for how things are going to work out. And I know that they will always work out for His glory. I'm so grateful that I don't have to be scared when I'm not sure how events are going to turn out, because I trust in the Lord to have a plan for my good. Now that's something that not only applies to Esther, but to us. This situation is a little bit scary, having to stay home. How much longer are we going to have to be home? And I don't know. And again, God's not surprised by any of this. He knew all about this. And I'm just trying to be obedient, follow the rules that the governor and the mayors and our president say for us, and all the healthcare workers who are on the task force who know better than I do how to protect ourselves. I'm just hoping each of you all are safe this week. I hope, like Esther, if you do get afraid, you turn to the Lord and pray for Him. Our closing prayer today is, Dearest Lord, I'm always so grateful that You are in control. Help me to be patient and brave when You ask me to do something difficult. Help me to remember that You will equip me and give me the skills I need when You ask me to do something for You. I will be obedient to You, Lord, and I will answer yes when You call my name. In Your precious name I pray. Amen. And remember, Esther didn't necessarily want to go and be queen, but God had allowed her to be chosen, and she is in a position, and she's a young girl trying so hard to do the right thing, and she wants to figure out a way to help save her people. So we get even more exciting next week. So I love you, and I'm praying for you, and I look forward to hopefully talking to you on a Zoom call. I love you. Bye, girls.